Right, good evening, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee. I'm Councillor Barry Pierpoint, and I'm the chairman of the committee, and my vice chairman tonight is Councillor Andy Izard, who's sitting in for Councillor James Cantwell, who's not available this evening. Before we move into the preliminary items of this evening's agenda, I need to run through a few housekeeping details. Please be advised that this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, recorded, and will be transcribed for the official record. By remaining in the room, you consent to being included in the recording and transcript. When addressing this meeting, please do so through the microphone system at all times. Due to the acoustics of the council chamber, it's imperative that the microphone settings are not adjusted. Members should only use the central button to switch the microphone on and off. Do not alter the microphone in any way. Simply raise your hand as usual, wait to be called, press the central button to activate your microphone before speaking, and speak clearly and directly so everyone in the room, remote participants and recordings can hear you. When finished, press the button again to turn it off. Mobile phones should be switched off or to silent mode. We've got nobody in the public area, so finally, please be advised that any abuse or intimidation of any kind will be not tolerated. Any disturbance will result in this meeting being adjourned. Anyone who is deemed to breach these requirements will be warned and asked to refrain. If the behaviour consists, they'll be required to leave the meeting. Now we'll move to part one of the agenda, the preliminaries. Are there any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. Their apologies have been received from Councillors James Cantwell and David Scoot.
Thank you, Ray. Declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare any interest in respect of any items on the agenda? No? Do I have the committee's permission to sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of November? Thank you. Are there any outstanding actions from the last meeting?
Thank you, Chair. The action sheet from the meeting held on the 17th of November 2025 circulated with your agenda, and there are no outstanding actions.
Thank you. Obviously, no public questions, so we'll move on. Oh, sorry, Councillor Woodliff.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to go back to page 2, and the members queried the rationale for increasing the threshold for written contract performance from 85,000 to 1 million. Officer explained that change focused on strategic high-value contracts, etc., etc. Now, it says here, detailed written response was provided following the meeting. Have you received a written response on that?
It's in the minutes, I think.
Is it?
Yes.
And was it? What the response?
Are you referring to the action points or are you referring to the minutes?
I understand actually that it was going to be changed from 1 million to 500,000. Have you been informed about that?
Well, I'll let you answer.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. A written response was circulated to confirm that the change had been made following full council on Monday last week.
Right, so we'll go back to what I was saying. Right, so there are no outstanding actions from the last meeting. Thank you. There's no questions from the public. That concludes the preliminaries. We'll now move on to part 2 of the agenda items. Right, we've got the Audit and Governance Committee Personal Skills Audit, and this is on page 19. I'm going to ask the Scrutiny and Policy Officer, Rebecca James, who's in attendance online, to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, councillors. So the idea of this personal skills audit, it's something that came out of your self-assessment that you did in the summer last year, and one of the actions was to do a personal skills audit, which would then feed into this year's self-assessment process. So the idea is to just, it feeds into that work to ensure that you've got continuous effective practice and that you're evaluating your impact. And if we look at Appendix 1, which starts at page 23, the personal skills audit, it's just to get an idea of what skills that you yourselves as councillors might have outside of the committee that can then that you can bring to the committee to kind of assist with the work. I'm saying committee way too much, but you get what I mean, hopefully. So if you look at where we've started on page 23 and 24, all of these areas are areas that you have across all of you as a committee. It's hoped that you have kind of a breadth of knowledge of these things. And Appendix 2, I think it starts at page 29. That is that comes from SIPFA, and it's core areas of skills and knowledge that committee members should have. So the idea is that if you look at Appendix 2, look at the kind of things that an audit and governance committee, the knowledge, the skills, the experience that you might have a look at where you would perhaps see yourselves fitting. And then we'll collate the information, and then that will feed into the self-assessment work we do in a few months' time. You've got a copy here in front of you if you have paper copies. After the meeting, I will also be sending a link round.
Can we have a ruling really that acronyms are to die at this meeting, and from now on everything will be in plain English so that ordinary people like me can understand it? I'll keep flipping through to find out what's that mean. It's not, there either has to be a glossary of the terms, or we don't use them. I know where I stand on that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure that there is a glossary somewhere, but I think it needs to be highlighted before you start reading the document to make sure you know what all those acronyms are. But we've listened to what you said, Councillor Woodliff, and we've taken note. Thank you very much. Anybody else like to ask any questions? Councillor Noble.
Thank you, Chair. Who's collecting these documents? Can they be given to Ray, because I've done mine? Yes, I did it after reading through the papers. Yeah. So can I give it to that man? Yes. Thank you. Well, there were briefing documents here, weren't there? 4 areas of knowledge. So you have to read that and address, then when you're filling it in, address those issues there.
Okay, well, I wasn't expecting as quick as that, but thank you.
Yeah, of course. If anybody has completed them, or they complete them during the meeting, I can speak to Democratic Services and make sure we kind of arrange to collect them in. But I will also be circulating it via email, so you'll have a chance afterwards as well.
I prefer people to do it out of this meeting, because this meeting is to focus and concentrate on the topics of the day.
Yes.
Filling
Sorry, of
forms
course,
in
I
and
didn't mean
writing
they
all your
should sit and
information
ignore
in.
you. And sorry.
No, I don't want people sitting here filling this in tonight, because it's not what the meeting's about. That's to take away and deal with it outside this meeting. Adam.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to, it's a really good idea, the skills audit. I just wanted, it's a bit unfortunate, some people have already completed it, so I just wanted to pick up a couple of points. I just wonder in section 5 whether IT literacy is really something that's specific to this committee. I get that it's something you would want of councillors, but is it really an audit and governance thing? I wonder if that might be better replaced by something like commercial understanding or contractual knowledge, contract awareness.
I think you're referring to page 25, 26,
yeah,
25. So there, other skills are that section's really other skills that you have outside of the committee that may benefit. They may not, they're just a list of examples, so you may or may not feel that they're relevant, but they were things that might assist with your work on the Audit and Governance Committee that you may have gained outside.
Yeah, I mean, it's only a minor thing, Rebecca, and yeah. I just sort of wonder a bit. IT literacy is quite a difficult thing to assess and be honest about, probably as well. We might just be better off with
Adam, I think you've just raised a couple of points there. I think when we were actually filling this in, there's sections for other, and you can drop the others in, like commercialisation and, you know, contractual purchasing contracts, that sort of thing. You can drop those in as examples and use them as well if you want to. I mean, the more information we get, the better. And if this thing is in this committee that we're discussing is not in these paperwork anywhere, there's a chance to put other in and drop it in and just mention it. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. But as I say, just to recall that, I mean, the concept is excellent, and it's really helpful to have got this done. So thanks, Rebecca.
Any other questions? Councillor Dorian.
Yeah, thank you. At the October meeting, I suggested when we looked at the work programme that we do a self-assessment. And following on from that, several councillors on this committee disagreed with me. Councillor Danny 3 times said I'd accused people of being lazy when I hadn't. I just in a very straightforward way, said that I felt we needed a self-assessment that we could identify further training needs. And you, Mr. Chairman, you said you didn't think we needed a self-assessment at all. It's all there on the transcript. And at the end of that declaration, you called me a beast. And I would like a public apology for that, please.
I don't call anybody a beast.
You did. It's on
And
the
the
transcript.
trouble with you is you make everything up as you go along. And I'm not having that from you. And we talked about that at the time and it wasn't relevant. It's relevant now. It's January, not October.
Well, the reason I raised it as part of the work programme is that this committee is supposed to do an annual self-assessment. The last one I could find for this committee was in July 2024. So for an entire year, the self-assessment was missed, which is why I suggested it in October. When I left the meeting, you referred to me as a beast. It's there on the transcript, it's there on the tape, and I would like a public
You're not getting an
apology.
apology from something I'm not
I
saying.
am not making things up. It's on the transcript. Everybody can go away and read it for themselves, watch the video for themselves. That's the beauty of recording these meetings.
We'll move on. Any other questions? Councillor Woodley.
It's not so much a question as an observation. I'm a group leader, and one of the problems I have is that allocating committee seats to people. Now, I've got a waiting list of people who want to appear on scrutiny. Yeah, but I don't have a waiting list for people who want to appear on audit and governance. And I look at this core of knowledge and the other things here, and I think that's going to be a problem for me, because the workload involved in this, as we know, is considerable. I sit on the committee. I enjoy it, actually. I accept the workload. I enjoy it. But it is an issue. I also feel that reading through this, it implies a degree of understanding which goes beyond the role of a councillor. Because councillors aren't supposed to be experts. Councillors are supposed to be ordinary people who are brought to a committee, who will do the training and so on, all the rest of it. But not experts. There's a great deal of expert knowledge in here. Like, for instance, awareness of the key principles of public sector internal audit standards, well, actually, it's a known principles, by the way, and the local government application note. How some of these things, of course, have changed. I know that, 'cause I looked them up. And there's a global rule now, apparently. But I think, in a way, it sets a standard. The standards are very, very high to work on this committee. But ordinary councillors are ordinary people. And I sit on licensing, I sit on audit and governance, I sit on planning. If you add up all the rules and laws associated with all that, well, I'd need 2 heads, wouldn't I? I've only got 1 head. And I think there's an issue. The amount of understanding that's required here goes beyond, I think, what is normally expected for an ordinary councillor, because we're not supposed to be experts. That's how we're drawn here. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, I hear what you say, and I understand where you're coming from. Let me just say that everybody around this table has all got different sets of knowledge, different sets of skills, and not everybody's got everything. So therefore, you can't have everything, and nobody's expecting you to do that. It's the understanding that you need, and where you not have got that knowledge, then we can arrange for the training to be implemented to help the group or individuals who want that knowledge. So that's not a problem. This is a very complex committee, as we know. But I say, you must write down where you're not clear about things, or you want help, or you haven't got that sufficient information, and we can arrange for that to be sorted for you. So don't worry about that. It is a collective. As I said, if we went around this table now and we haven't got the time, we'd find out all the different skill sets that everybody's got to offer. And I would imagine everything, those boxes will nearly get ticked. Okay? So don't worry about that. So I hear what you say, but you know, I understand where you're coming from. Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would like just to say that we are sitting on this committee as a non-political committee. We are people, you know, to represent the citizens. That's one thing. Second thing I would like to touch on, that we are here to agree and disagree on certain things. We are councillors, we can debate and talk about issues. It's not a personal thing towards anyone, from me, from myself as a statement. I have the right to agree or disagree. And the third thing, which is I want to touch on, yes, we need, I think, on the report to have more simplicity. And I think if we require any other information, we should have probably have the right to meet one or two of the officers to have more explanation face to face, because sometimes it goes far. It's much better just reading and Googling the words and going through here and there. And I think face to face will probably sort out a lot of things. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I think when we've got these all completed, it'll give Rebecca a chance to have a good look at everything, and she'll be able to then put forward a plan of what we do going forward, whether it be individual help or whether it be a group. Anyway, I think we're going to move on now. I don't want any more questions from that one. Rebecca, thank you very much for the work you've done. Do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you. So, internal audit progress report. I'm going to ask Mark Harrison now to present his report. Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This is the second interim report for 25-26. Since compiling this report, there has been some changes, so I will bring you up to date with those changes. So since the last internal report, we have completed the capital budget monitoring review, the PSPS contract review, leisure services procurement review, and the section 106 review. And as I said earlier, since submitting this report, the health and safety actions implementation review has also been completed. And today we have also completed and sent out the funds and grants administration, and that was the assurance level for that was adequate. Page 41 of your pack is the feedback section. Feedback questionnaires are issued at every audit assignment for completed 2025-26 audits. Officers provide their feedback. On your report, it says 5 out of 8, but I can now say that we are 9 out of 9, and there is 100% completion, and that is down to the new section 151, who picked up the questionnaires that hadn't been completed and has completed them. So we're now at 100%. Figure 2 of the audit plan delivery, page 42 of your pack, shows the progress since submitting the form. The figures have obviously changed now with the completion of the extra report, and it's now at 62.5% completed, with 37.5% work in progress. Table 2, analysis of live audit reviews on page 44 of the pack, shows that the Funds and Grants Administration and Plan Review draft report was issued on the 14th of November 2025, with a closure meeting was held on the 26th of November 2025. And as I've said to you, that has been completed and sent out today. And again, I thank the section 151 for chasing that up on our behalf. Table 4 on page 48. Obviously, there are some updates. It's also on page 49, which will show the completion of the Funds and Grants Administration. The report should be sent out. The Health and Safety and Actions implementation, again, the final report is sent out and that should show us adequate. And again, in relation to field work for ICT AI governance, that is also in progress, and the identification of monitoring and savings, again, that is at the field work stage. Table 8 of page 4950 of the pack shows the follow-up reviews. 11 actions were completed and closed down in Q3, with a further 8 actions to be subject of follow-up reviews in Q4. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Mark. Anybody want to ask any questions? Councillor Noble.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have about 5. Let's start on page 41, which was about the performance dashboard and the timeliness of the final report. And it says, for completing the 25-26 audit, officers were provided feedback responses to 5 of the 8 requests issued following completed audit assignments. The response rate has raised concerns relating to a perceivable lack of management engagement with the internal audit service. and details of this have been raised with the senior management team. So my question is, how does this council, specifically the senior management team, plan to address this issue, and is PSPS at fault in any way?
Thank you, Councillor. In relation to the outstanding questionnaires, the individual who was responsible for not sending them back is no longer with your organisation. So that has been dealt with. And as I said, there was a discussion with SLT and also with the chair at his pre-briefing, and the new section 151 stepped in and completed those on behalf of the organisations.
Can you put your microphone on?
Beg your pardon, sorry, Chair. Yes, in relation to page 43, we've got various progress reports and completion dates. For example, planning was supposed to be completed in December 2025. So was the finance, resilience, and including skills, capacity, and management code compliance. Has that been completed? That was for December. Similarly, for the health and safety actions implementation. So have those now been done? Can you tell us?
Thank you again, Councillor. Yes, as I said, the health and safety actions and implementation, that has been completed now. The planning report is with myself before that should be issued for a draft. And again, we're just completing the finance and resilience skills. And again, that should hopefully be completed in the next week or so.
Okay. Sorry, thank you. Next question is, this is on page 44, identification and monitoring of savings, and it talked about there were seven key findings reported with 5 root causes. Can you explain what those root causes were or are? And then it goes on to talk about the need for immediate need for effective action, and there was an assurance-driven audit arranged to provide an update of systems and processes implemented. Has that been done?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, if I draw your attention to table 4 on page 48, as you can see, we've started the identification and monitoring of savings review again, and that was obviously based after the discussion at the previous audit committee, where the previous section 151 had put a new process in place. Obviously, now that that's in place, we are now carrying out a whole new review. So as I updated you, that's currently in the fieldwork stage. In relation to the previous report, obviously that was discussed, I think probably if not the last, the previous audit committee. To hand, I don't have the root causes, but I'm happy to feed that in.
And just lastly, please, this is on page 47. We've got identification and monitoring of savings. The audit sponsor is the S15 officer. Insufficient controls report. So what are the S15 officers here, I think tonight, plans for rectifying this?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, and I think as Mark has set out, I think the initial report was undertaken with the previous 151. Since that point, and we've put in some significant steps to make sure that we are monitoring and tracking savings, that they're being reported through and signed off in a way that's clear and we can evidence as well. So I think my expectation is that when we go through the audit testing, that will result in a significant improvement on the position that was previously identified.
Yes, you asked lots of the questions I'd written down anyway, so I'll let you do it rather than me. Does anybody else want to ask a question? Councillor Woodliff.
Thank you, Chairman. I was looking at page 46, actually, and the PSPS contract management, and I picked out the third line from the bottom. It says here, however, not all council board members have declared their roles in published interests. Has that been resolved? Hasn't, right. Okay. I'll take that as being no. And then it's at the bottom, page 1.
Well, we don't know that yet, so we can't just take one person's word for it.
Right,
so
okay.
We'll write that down.
I don't know. Right, okay. And then
you can't answer that question, can you?
Those would relate to the management actions. The management actions will be followed up. I'm sure it is in Q4. If not, it'll be in Q1 of next year. So obviously, once those management actions, if that forms part of the management actions, then yes, I would be able to give you an answer then.
Okay. And then there's one other thing, if I may mention, Chairman. That's bottom of the page, section 106. It picks out it says here, fourth line, fifth line down. However, the statutory deadline for the IPS publication was missed at ELD and Boston Borough Council, and Section 106 related risks were not formally recognised within the operational risk registers. Any comment to make on that?
Obviously, those will feature in the management actions, and that would obviously be for the officers who are in charge of that area to deal with, Councillor.
All the points are being covered and they're all being monitored and written down, so not a problem. Adam.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mark. You've answered nearly all my questions, but there's just one. And it's a comment, really. It's about the chart on page 41. When I first looked at this, I couldn't really understand it. I just realised what it's telling me, but I just wonder if, not for now perhaps, but when we're using charts like this in future, whether some commentary is needed. You see what I mean? It is a bit difficult to interpret. Yeah. So for example, when you're talking about timeliness of final report, what you're saying there is there's one report that's poor, I think, and 3 that are excellent, I think, and perhaps 1 that's very good. Do you see what I mean? It is tricky.
Thank you. I'll revisit the colours, and then yes, I can look at perhaps giving a narrative and a breakdown of numbers if that's simpler. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. That'll be most welcome. Councillor Pright.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Boston Borough Council appointed Director of PSPSL and have undergone the extensive training that the company provides for its directors. We know, and I'm sure members of the council know, that PSPSL is in fact an arm's length organisation of the council, and the roles of the directors are very separate to those of the councillor, and that's been drummed into us at every opportunity, and we're very well aware of that. I had thought that the council was aware of the separation of duties because it has had previous members of the board before I was appointed who would have been in the same position as I and my colleague is now. So I'm not sure why it's a problem or a potential problem for the council now in terms of audit. I don't think it is a problem, to be honest, because board members know their roles on the board and as councillors, and I don't think anything gets in the way.
Well, that's reassuring. Thank you very much, Councillor Pright. Councillor Downing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just go to page 44 and we go to identifications and monitoring of savings. I mean, it says insufficient controls, and then you go at the bottom, these issues will be resolved or sorted out. It's anticipated to be in Q4. I think I share my opinion about that because it's not performing well. I think we should probably take action as soon as possible or rectify it before Q4.
Thank you, Councillor. Obviously, within that initial report that we submitted, there were obviously areas that we've highlighted to them. But obviously, we will then, as was the request of all the audit committees, we will then go back and we will look at what the new process is.
Councillor Dorian.
A question for you, Russell, if that's okay. Regarding overdue and extended management actions, could you describe, if you have one, any formal escalation process that you might trigger when actions are repeatedly delayed? And at what point would you then report those as a governance risk to this committee?
Yes, through you, Chairman. Yes, I think in terms of the monitoring review process, obviously this is something that we pick up close with internal audit in terms of keeping a track on what is happening and where things are slipping behind. I I think in terms of the actions that we take, it very much depends on the nature of the findings and the audits that took place, and how far it is slipping by. So, for example, on the first one of these, we've got a key control testing for a substantial assurance opinion. Having a substantial opinion would suggest that the majority of the functions are operating relatively effectively. So that potentially buys a little bit of leeway. Some of that would also be reflected in the timescale for actually implementing the action. But I mean, these are the sorts of things that they come out through conversation. Whilst there's formal reporting, it's very much a case of going and speaking to the officers, seeing what's going on and finding out where the root causes might be. Obviously, if we were to encounter an issue where there's just a reluctance to engage, that potentially raises more of an issue than we just have been particularly busy this month. It's on the radar, it's in progress, but we're not quite there yet. So I think it's very much depends on the circumstances. Obviously, if there was an underlying issue, something that was repeated, I think that's where we'd be looking at reporting through to the audit committee and escalating in the officer sort of hierarchy as well.
Thank you for that. Just to finish, because Councillor Noble covered off all the topics I had. Well done. Under page 46, under the PSPS contract management, the line that Councillor Woodliff mentioned earlier, just let me find it, where it says not all council board members had declared their roles in public interest. That has not been rectified, because upon reading the document, I went and checked. And not only isn't it not okay, you're actually committing a criminal offence.
Let's move on. Right. First of all, Mark, thank you very much for your report and all the details there. I'd like to thank Russell for doing what he did by getting all these information up to date, up to speed, to assist us with the report for Mark, because you came in at short notice and managed to get all the information that's required. So thank you very much for doing that. You've only been here 5 minutes and you've done a great job so far. Thank you. Right, we'll go on to the next item then. Draft Treasury Management Policy Statement, and I'm sure it's Sean. Sean, over to you. I was going to read all that out, but I don't need to. Over to you, Sean.
Is it? Thank you very much, Chair. You have before you the Draft Treasury Management Policy Statement, the Draft Treasury Management Strategy Statement, Minimum Revenue Provision Policy Statement, and Annual Investment Strategy for 2026-27, and the Treasury Management and Investment Management Non-Treasury Principles and Practices. Apologies for the title, but they are all documents required by the CIPFA Code of Practice on Treasury Management. I propose to go through the main appendices rather than the overarching report. So if we go to Appendix 1 on page 57, that is the Appendix 1, the Treasury Management Policy Statement. There is no change to this in comparison with previous years, and it's here for completeness. So we go to Appendix 2, which is the main document, the Treasury Management Strategy Statement, and I will start on page 60. Part of the Treasury Management operation is to ensure that this cash flow is adequately planned, with cash being available when it is needed. The second main function of the Treasury Management Service is the funding of the Council's capital plans. These capital plans provide a guidance to the borrowing need of the Council, essentially the long-term cash flow planning to ensure that the Council can meet its capital spending obligations. Paragraph 1.2 on page 61 provides information in relation to the reporting requirements. We have to produce a capital strategy prior to the start of each financial year, and that's included as part of your budget setting report that goes to Council. We also have to produce various Treasury Management reports. We have a Prudential and Treasury Indicators and Treasury Strategy, which is this main report that I refer to now. And during the year, we'll provide a mid-year Treasury Management report, which goes to the Audit and Governance Committee and Council. And at the end of the financial year, we'll also produce an annual Treasury report, which also goes to the Audit Governance Committee, followed by Council. In addition to these documents, we also provide quarterly reports to the Audit and Governance Committee, which don't follow to Council. Paragraph 1.3 refers to the information that's provided in your Treasury Management Strategy for 2026-27, and they refer to capital issues and Treasury Management issues in relation to those bullet points shown at the bottom of page 62. Paragraph 1.4 refers to training, and as highlighted earlier in previous skills audit discussions, training for members will be arranged as required, and the training needs of Treasury Management officers are periodically reviewed. Section 2 refers to the capital prudential indicators. This is the Council's capital expenditure plans and how those plans are going to be financed. I should stress that at the moment, the information that's included in these reports and the numbers are at draft stage at this moment in time and are subject to change in the final version, which may go to Council as and when the budget process follows its normal process. You'll see at the bottom of page 64 the current capital programme and how that capital programme is going to be financed at the time the report was written, which shows for 2026-27 capital expenditure of just under £12 million, of which approximately £4.3 million of that is financed. Therefore, that creates a borrowing requirement on the Council of £7.7 million. Paragraph 2.2 provides a summary of the Council's borrowing need. That's the borrowing need in relation to the current and future capital programmes, and that's shown at the bottom of page 65. So you'll see there, this also includes the historic capital expenditure, which hasn't been paid for and is being paid for over the lifetime of the assets. So you'll see the estimate for the historic and current capital expenditure at the end of 2026-27 is expected to be £26.3 million, which is an increase of £7.4 million. And you'll also see the projections through to 2030-31 for being the term of the medium-term financial strategy. And by the end of the 2030-31, it is expected that the capital financing requirement, unfinanced capital expenditure, is around £24.5 million. On paragraph 2.4, you'll see the Council's level of core funds and expected investment balances for the period through to 2030-31. And at the end of 2026-27 financial year, based on projected cash flow resource use for the capital programme and financing of that capital expenditure, those reserve balances are forecast to go down to £18.2 million, with working capital of £2 million on top of that, and an under borrowing position of £22.371 million, giving overall investment balances of net borrowing of £2.168 million. Paragraph 2.5 refers to the minimum revenue provision policy, which has to be approved in advance of each financial year. And this sets out how the Council will pay for its unfinanced capital expenditure, and mainly under the various different headings referred to. Page 71 provides a table of the current capital financing requirement projected to be at the end of 2026, March 2026. There is unsupported capital expenditure incurred since 2007-8. That should read 2,651,000, not 16,266, as you will see that as a copy of the information below under property funds. And in relation to that unfinanced capital expenditure during 26-27, we will make a minimum revenue provision charge of 195,000 towards that capital expenditure. And the projected overall position, because we'll have to make minimum revenue provision in respect of the Council's property fund investments, which totaled £16.266 million of unfinanced capital expenditure, and also the lease figures, which at the moment we haven't got those figures available, but they will be available in the final document that goes to Council. The table at the bottom of page 71 and at the top of page 72 explains how the Council calculates its MRP under each category. Section 3 refers to the Council's borrowing position, and bullet point 3.1 shows the current portfolio position at the 31st of December in comparison with the 31st of March 2025. So you'll see there that the Council had managed investments of £34.7 million, at the end of March, and that's currently showing at the end of December as £25.3 million. Property funds slightly lower than the 31st of March position due to small repayments from the fund managers. And that gives total treasury investments at the 31st of December of £42.4 million. The council's external borrowing position, you'll see there's still £1 million worth of borrowing outstanding, albeit that's changed now from a LOBO loan to a PWLB loan. So the net position is the council has at the 31st of December had net investment of £41.4 million. The table on top of page 74 provides information in relation to the council's borrowing position because the council cannot externally borrow more than its capital financing requirement. So you'll see at the end of 2026-27, we are projecting that the council's position on borrowing will be that it will have a £1 million borrowing prior to the 1st of April. It's expecting to take £3 million worth of external borrowing during the year, so it will have external borrowing of £4 million, and therefore, with a capital financing requirement of £26.3 million, we are significantly under borrowed because we are utilising the council's reserve balances rather than externally borrowing, because the external borrowing costs are more expensive than the interest that we can receive on the funds that we invest. Paragraph 3.2 refers to the Treasury indicators. This limits the amount of borrowing that the council can undertake. There is an operational boundary, and based on you'll see at the table at bottom of page 74, from the capital programmes, you'll be aware of the overall borrowing requirement that I briefly mentioned at the start of the report. So because the council is expecting to have significant unfinanced capital expenditure, we are increasing the operational boundary for borrowing from 15 million to 35 million pounds, and that is to provide flexibility to the Section 151 officer to finance that, externally borrow those funds as and when the interest rates are at their most cost effective for the council. So it may be that 35 million, well, it's most likely that 35 million pounds won't be undertaken in 26-27, but it gives the option to actually undertake that borrowing if we deem that those interest rates are where we expect them to be at their lowest. The authorised limit for external debt provides a buffer for unforeseen circumstances, emergencies, etc. There is an error on the 2025-26 position. The other long-term liabilities, which states £3 million, should state £5 million to give that correct total of £18 million. But that again is increasing by the £20 million to reflect the change in the operational boundary, and it just provides that additional £3 million headroom for emergencies. Paragraph 3.3 refers to the prospects for interest rates. MUFG Corporate Markets are our external treasury advisors to the council, and they provide us with a forecast for interest rates, the bank's base rate. And you'll see from that table, March 26, they're expecting the rate to be 3.7, which is where the rate is at the moment. And then they're expecting the rate to drop to 3.5 during quarter end in 2026. And finally, a reduction to 3.25% in December 2026. And then they are expecting that bank base rate to remain the same through to March 2029. We use these forecasts for interest rates when we calculate our budget for investment income. Paragraph 3.4 refers to the council's borrowing strategy on page 78. Council is currently maintaining an underborrowed position, and this strategy is prudent as medium and long-term dated borrowing rates are expected to fall from their current levels. And paragraph 3.5 refers to the council's policy on borrowing in advance of need. The council will not borrow more than or in advance of its need purely in order to profit from the investments of the extra sums borrowed. Section 4 refers to the council's annual investment strategy, and 4.1 investment policy management of risk. This is the key area for controlling where the council invests its funds to ensure, first of all, the security of the funds invested, then the liquidity, and then the yield. There is virtually no change to this section of the report in comparison with previous years, so I don't propose to go through that in any detail. The only change in risk management policy from last year, which I will refer to, is the lending limits section on page 82, where the maximum limit for placing funds with money market funds, it is proposed to increase that to £10 million from £7.5 million. And the reason for this is due to the high levels of cash that we are required to hold for short-term purposes to pay the rising precept costs, which continue to increase year on year. Paragraph 4.4, the Council's investment strategy. There's a section there in relation to the investment return expectations. And as previously discussed, the current forecast shown in paragraph 3.3 includes a forecast for bank rate to fall to a low of 3.25%. Section 5 on page 87 gives a list of the appendices that we required to produce. Appendix 5.1, top of page 88. I won't go through that. That's the capital and prudential indicators, which I have already discussed. We refer to also affordability prudential indicators, and there's a table at the bottom of page 88, the ratio of financing costs to net revenue stream. I haven't been able to populate those figures at the moment because not all the information is available, but as and when the budget process is completed, these figures will be shown in the report that goes to Council, and you will be able to see them at that time. Paragraph 5.1.3, maturity structure of borrowing, page 89. You'll see that all the lower limits and all the upper limits are set at 100%. The Council has extremely low level of external borrowing, so setting these levels at 0 and 100% allows maximum flexibility. Appendix 5.2 is your interest forecast through from 2026 to 2029. I won't discuss that again because we've referred to that already. And you also have Appendix 5.3, specified investments. There are no changes to this area apart from the money market funds, but this lists all the types of investments that the Council can make should it choose to do so, if there are opportunities where we can maximise yield without reducing the security or the liquidity arrangements. There is also a section on page 92 which refers to the non-specified investments, which are the more complex investment instruments, and again, no changes to those. Appendix 5.4 is a list of the approved countries for investments, and that is based on the position of the Fitch, Moody's and Standard & Poor credit ratings for those countries. And just because these countries are on this list doesn't mean we will use them at all times. Section 151 officer does have discretion to not invest in certain areas should he wish to do so. Appendix 5.5 provides the Treasury Management Scheme of Delegation, and also 5.6, the Treasury Management role of the Section 151 officer and deputy. There's no changes to those documents, so again, don't propose to go through those. Appendix 3 on page 101 is the Treasury Management and Investment Management non-treasury principles and practices. There's a lot of duplication in this document from the previous report that I've discussed. I don't propose to go through this document in any detail, and I am happy to take questions if you have any. Recommendation is that Audit and Governance Committee scrutinise the 3 Treasury documents and make any comments and suggestions for consideration by Cabinet in February and Council on the 2nd of March as part of the budget setting report. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Just for the benefit of Councillor Woodliffe, the acronyms are on page 55. I just thought I'd let you know that. Councillor Noble, you start the ball rolling.
Thank you, Chair. Just have 55. I'll try to be quick. Firstly, on page 54, this is referred to by Sean, and thank you for an excellent report, Sean. But I think this question may be able to be answered by the S51 officer. Okay, so we were talking about these increases in the operational boundary for external borrowing from 15 million to 35 million. That's a very significant increase. And the authorised borrowing limit from 18 million to 38 million. Again, another very significant increase. So I'm a bit concerned about this, given that the council may be defunct in a couple of years' time. And it talks about the rationale being unfinanced capital expenditure in the capital programme. So if we cross-reference to page 64, we know that there's a borrowing requirement of 7.7 million. But and it says the increase in the borrowing limits will provide the S451 officer with to externally borrow to cover the capital expenditure when market conditions are favourable. I just question why is that unnecessary? I mean, presumably we have our list of proposed capital spending on page 64. As I said, the council will be no more very shortly. So why are we doing this? Why is it so necessary?
Do you want to answer, Russell, or you want Sean to answer? Or?
Yeah, well, I'm quite happy, Chairman, to make a start. And if Sean notices at any point that I'm taking the committee down the wrong path, I'm sure he will bring us back on track. But yes, and in essence, this is setting the maximum based on what could happen. Now, I think as a council, we already have, and it is an extreme scenario in fairness, but we already have potential to borrow based on the plans that have already taken place, the actions that have already taken place. The fact we've chosen to use internal resource sort of reduces the need to borrow, but it doesn't mean at some point in the future we couldn't reverse that decision. And the one that that probably jumps out as being the biggest item on that list would relate to the property funds. Obviously, what we've done is initially there was borrowing taken out which financed those. That was then repaid at a significant discount, and that's working its way through. But in reality, what that shows as is unfinanced capital expenditure. If the council was so minded, at some point in the future, they could decide to finance that capital expenditure, so they could go out and borrow for it. Now, when you combine that with some of the programs that we've got taking place elsewhere, so things like the refuse fleet replacement program, that's a multi-million-pound program, which again, approach at the moment would be to use internal funds to essentially cash flow that financing. But we have to set out in the plans how we would finance it long term. So again, that element gets added to the capital financing requirement, and that's why we've got that increase, to allow that, if you like, extreme eventuality that all that borrowing that we've not taken out previously but have capital expenditure that hasn't been financed, we could be required to actually borrow to fund it. So it's a little bit of a roundabout answer, but hopefully that provides some clarity.
My second question is just simply this, and I think you can answer this probably rather than Sean. Any idea of the amount of savings required to be made by the council in the next financial year?
Yes, through you, Chairman. Yes and no. So I think in terms of the yes, we've prepared draft budgets. That currently forecasts a funding shortfall in next year of around £1.3 million. We're obviously
sorry, say that figure again. Sorry.
Yep. Now, what we are doing through the draft process as we finalise the budgets, or at least prepare the budgets for consideration by Cabinet and Council, is trying to reduce down that funding gap. We do still have a number of levers available to us that will hopefully contribute towards that. It's likely to be end of January, early February before we have that position finalised. I mean, in terms of where we are, if that gap's not closed, we do have reserves that we could direct towards it to close that funding gap off. But that's something that will work its way through over the next month or so.
Last question. Again, this is to Sean, please. It's on page 67, I think. Let me just. Yes, Sean. Expected investments. Okay, so in 25 to 26, we've got an estimate of 6.5 million, I presume that is, and in the following year, the estimate is much lower. It's only 2.1. You can explain that diminution, please? Why?
Yes, what happens during the year, obviously as the capital expenditure is incurred, what happens is the cash gets used to finance that capital expenditure if it's been specifically earmarked. So as and when those invoices go through for payment, the amount of the investments that are cash balances that are held obviously reduce. It can also vary based on the council's working capital at any point in time. If you're good at collecting your debtors, for example, or council tax, you collect good collection rates, the actual amount of investment balances go up. And likewise, if you delay payment of invoices or you've got a lot of invoices outstanding, that's also good for your collection. But we have a policy of making sure that our invoices are paid to our suppliers. But the actual investment balances and core funds does regularly change and is quite fluid. But this is our projection at this moment in time.
Sean, and thank you for a very comprehensive report. Thank you.
Adam.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sean. I just wanted, if I could, just to pop back to the operational boundary in terms of the ceiling, if we needed to use that level of debt at any point. And I don't want to question that at all, but I just wanted, if you could, just to help the committee with what the financial implications could be.
Could you give us a page number, Adam?
Yes, I'm so sorry. It's page 74 and 75. So yeah, the financial implications if we ever did need to borrow towards or at that upper limit. Thank you.
Yes, obviously the operational boundary is set to take account of the overall council's financial position and taking into account the capital expenditure that has already been incurred. And I think it was £18 million from memory. Oh no, sorry, 22. It's expected to be £22.3 million internally borrowed. So that by the end of 2026, 31st of March 2026, the table above that 3.2 table shows that we are likely to have already incurred just under £18 million of that has already been spent and effectively been incurred. But we've used the earmarked balances to pay for that rather than externally borrow, because it would cost the council more to externally borrow. But as and when those earmarked reserves are spent on capital programmes and specifically earmarked, those cash balances actually reduce, and there will come a time when the council will have to externally borrow for that historic capital expenditure, because it can no longer effectively pay for that. It can no longer utilise the cash balances because they're going to be used for something else. So they do then have to restore those cash balances by bringing that external borrowing money in. What we do as part of the budget process, I do a projection of what the council's investment balances are expected to be during the year, at the start of the year, what the council's capital programme is going to be, so how much money is going to go out the door through capital expenditure, how much of that is going to be new money coming in financed from grant, so that will bring additional money in, and the net result of that will show what the council's ending capital cash position will be at the end of the financial year. So if I see that that's likely to drop to a position where the council has no longer got positive cash balances, that's when I will be, as part of the budget setting report at the moment, we are projecting that we'll need to have £3 million of external borrowing next year. And what part of the budget setting process will show what that projected borrowing costs are likely to be for the 5-year term.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. I think that completely assures me that we've got very firm controls over that. So thank you very much.
Councillor Dorian.
It's a question for you again, Russell. Sorry about this. In terms of our property funds, it's clear they've declined in value. And I just wondered if you had any measurable threshold that would trigger a formal exit from those funds, or a rebalancing decision of some kind.
Yes, through you, Chairman. Yes, at this point, we don't necessarily have a sort of a formal criteria that we're assessing against, but we are keeping the property funds under the regular review. I think at this point, the rates are probably slightly below what we could get in other mechanisms that are available to us, but the returns are not bad by any means. And I think with the way interest rates are forecast to move, I think property funds will probably prove to be a reasonably decent investment for us. I think in terms of the capital values on them, as with any sort of investment of this nature, the carrying value can drop, but that doesn't mean you realise any gain or loss until you actually dispose of the assets. So I think it's weighing up a whole raft of issues with the property fund to see where we want to be. I think in reality, if we were in a position where the asset value worked and the investment returns we could get elsewhere, that sort of matched our cash flow and security requirement, we would look or be quite keen to potentially dispose of those. But at this point, the time's not right, so the intention would be we hold for the time being. What I would say as well is, whilst the carrying value is lower than the purchase price at this point, over the life of the investment, it still proves to be a good investment. If we compared that to sort of standard approach of pop it in essentially a savings account, I think the net position is still a positive one. So whilst it can look a bit stark on paper, overall, I think they've been a good investment for the council.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I think it's just always struck me, especially last year after, thanks to Sean, we redeemed the State Street loan, but before that, the £6 million loan, and that to me at the time, and Sean, I don't mean to embarrass you, but it struck me at the time that it was entirely down to our good fortune in having you on our staff, or access to you on our staff to I've forgotten the name of it. PSPS. Try to forget them. So that's why I asked if there was a formal mechanism for you in some way that you would have a metric that you would say, right, on this day at this time, if this is the scenario for our situation, then we are going to withdraw, rather than us just rely on. I mean, what if you were off sick? What if Sean had been off sick that week? It would have been a very different outcome. So that's why I asked the question. But I do understand what you're saying. Perhaps that's something you would give some thought to before the next meeting.
Councillor Darnay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one question for Sean and I think one for Russell for clarification. The first one is, if we go to page 3 and we go to paragraph 33, external audit completion report, and there is, I think, 2 lines there. The auditors highlighted that material misstatements relating to asset values has been identified, and it was, I think, Graffiti Lane.
What page are you on? Because I'm
3.
Page 3.
Yeah, from the beginning. I'm just coming to it as a support of what I want to say. And we say Graffiti Lane, land value per acre assumption overstated by 1.485 million. And then there is the athletic art inflationary uplift error resulting in overstatement again at 1.249. My question to Sean, if we have these gift up numbers, or maybe I don't know, that time the surveyor, whoever, surveyed that land and give us these prices, and I mean we're looking probably at almost 2.5 million here, or 2.6. Does it not affect our finances and our assets, in our forecast for the years coming? And has it been rectified back to the original one, or the real value?
Apologies, I had my microphone on again. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't get involved in relation to the asset side, but the valuation of the assets obviously form part of your balance sheet, where we are talking about the annual running of the council's treasury position, and in relation to the asset balances, the only way that was likely to affect this treasury report that we have here is if, for example, we were looking to sell those assets. Part of the council's medium-term financial strategy would have an item in this report for capital receipts, which would therefore increase the council's reserve balances once they receive. But you only ultimately know the price of an asset once you actually try to actively market that. So it's unlikely to make a significant difference to this report. But I do know as part of our year-end accounting process, when we are producing the financial statements, we do have to take the view of our external valuers and also the internal auditors. They have also external valuers as well. They use valuers. And it is, at the end of the day, it's an opinion, and even professionals differ in valuations. So, but ultimately, it doesn't have a significant effect on what we see here today.
Thank you, Sean. For Russell, it just we go to page 79 and we go to the top paragraph. If it was felt that there was a significant risk of much sharper rise, and I mean of borrowing, so then there is a monitoring way of finding out how often do we monitor the market, especially now with the political arena is very hot. I mean, with 10% of tariffs put by Mr. Probably the emperor of the war, Mr. Trump, on Europe, and then he's going to go to 25%. And so how often do we do this monitoring and you know, to protect ourselves?
Yes, for you, Chairman. Yes, on a very regular basis. I think obviously global national issues will affect the rates that we can borrow at and we can lend at. You'll have seen since probably the last 18 months, gilt rates have been incredibly volatile, but also high, and that's what drives our borrowing rate. I think the last time I checked the borrowing rates was this morning, and that's something that that I do on a regular basis, if not daily, then fairly close to that, just to see how things are moving and where the opportunities might be for us. I think what I would say in terms of that that paragraph, current assumption is that even with some of the interventions in the sort of short to medium term, we're expecting rates to come down rather than up. But as you say, with some of the things that are happening, it could well be that we find that goes a different way. But yeah, that is one of the fun bits of the job, keeping an eye on where the markets might go.
Councillor Pryke. Then I'll go to you, Councillor Woodliff.
Thank you, Chairman. First is for Sean. It's an explanation, please. Page 66, the diagram about our liability benchmarking. It's a little confusing because we've got several different lines that could be the red lines in the graph. But I'm assuming that the top red line is the net loans requirement. Is that correct?
Apologies, my print's in black and white, but yeah, the top line is the council's capital financing requirement. That's yeah, so the top line is the capital financing requirement, which is the council's historic capital expenditure that hasn't yet been paid for.
So broadly, we're at 20 million at the moment, and we're going to go up to 25 million over 2 years, and then that'll decline over the 50-year period. Sorry, the 50-year period to zero. It would, of course, be very interesting to see what all the other councils in Lincolnshire do with their graphs and what their expectations are, because come 2027, 2028, we'll have new figures all round, and many of us probably won't be here to look at it. But okay, that's the top line, which I assumed it was. What is the lowest line on this graph? Because there are several other red lines that it could be. But because those are negative figures, they're okay. That's helpful, but it wasn't very clear, I must say. But that's good. My next point is an observation, really, and it's about the thing on page 95 about environmental, social and governance considerations. Now, it is. It's page 95 of this report, and it's not for Sean, it's a general observation. In the past, I've observed that Boston Council doesn't pay much attention to ESG considerations. Our advisors do not have that as a priority, and neither do PSPS's advisors. I've commented in the past in council about how I regretted that Boston Council invests in palm oil plantations in the tropics, where we are demolishing tropical forests to make ingredients for food, basically. Sorry.
Go.
But I notice that we are supposed to be developing our strategy in this area. And I would suggest that it might be a first move to appoint advisors who could tell us how to do that, because we don't have them at the moment.
Well, all I'm going to say to that is we're going to make a note of it. We're going to talk to the SLT and come back with some answers for you, okay? Right. One last question, Councillor Woodliff, and then we're going to move on.
Thank you, Chairman. I've just been a short one. It's page 70, really, and I noticed it says here key changes from the 2024 amendments to Regulation 27. The key, it talks about here with effect from 1st of April 2024. The minimum revenue position? Will apply to right of use leased assets for the introduction of IFRS 16. IFRS is not in the glossary. I've checked. The thing is, how are we affected by this, major change in the Regulation 27? It says actually explicit prohibition for using capital receipts in place of charging the minimum revenue provision, or charging to revenue. Are we affected by this? And are we? It says further on, where loans have been advanced to third parties. Do we do that? I don't think we do. Do we? Have we any loans to third parties? Are we affected by that in any way? Thank you, Sean. Yeah. Sean.
Yes, at the moment we don't have any loans to third parties, but that was just a key in relation to the bullets. That was a key in relation to the changes of the regulations. IFRS is Institute of Financial Reporting Standards. So effectively the professional accounting bodies, there is a reporting council which is represented by all the professional bodies, and they bring forward changes and to accounting regulations which are agreed, and we have to abide by all those regulations. Just for clarity, MRP, minimum revenue provision, that is the annual charge that we make each year, or we are required to make each year to pay for the historic capital expenditure that hasn't already been paid for, so effectively over the lifetime of the asset. And out of the things that Boston have got included in their included in their capital financing requirement at the moment, they have the property funds. That was changed as part of these regulations, whereby the council originally just made a provision of, from memory, I think they made a provision of 50,000 each year, but there has to be a policy as to how you're going to do that in accordance with the guidelines, which states that property funds are equity. So the guidelines say that that should be 20 years, but you can extend that to a greater period if you consider the assets behind the equity to be of have a greater life, and the assets behind property fund investments are property. And I would like to think that those properties do have a useful life of more than 20 years. So, but in relation to the other unfinanced capital expenditure, that tends to be things like your refuse vehicles, IT equipment, all that sort of stuff. So we use, for vehicles, we use a life of 7 years, and we write down the cost over 7 years. So there will be 1/7 charge each year. Also included in your table on page 71, you have what's known as right of use lease assets. The council does lease some assets, and effectively recently there was a regulation change whereby you have to bring lease assets onto the balance sheet, and because they are of a capital nature, there's loans of over greater than a period of 1 year. They have to be included in the council's capital financing requirement, and those figures will be advised in the final report that goes to council. But basically the amount that it reduces by is the amount of principal that you repay on that lease each year.
Thank you, Sean, for your report. It's very kind of you, very thorough, very detailed as always. And don't forget to put those 2 acronyms in just for Councillor Woodliff, because what they stand for. I'm going to read the recommendations out now, and then we're going to vote on it. So the Audit and Governance Committee scrutinised the Treasury Management Policy. Appendix 1, the Treasury Management Strategy Statement, Minimum Revenue Provision Policy and Annual Investment Strategy 26-27. Appendix 2, and the Treasury Management Investment Non-Treasury Principles and Practices, page 51, Agenda Item 3. Appendix 3, and make comments and suggestions for consideration by Cabinet in February 2026 and Council on the 2nd of March 26 when they consider these documents as part of the budget report. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Danny, do I have a seconder? Councillor Saviak. Is right. All those in favour? Any against? Any amendments? Sorry, any abstentions? Right. Thank you. All recorded. Lovely.
You move on. Point of information. You know, Councillor Danny talked about the 2 mispriced assets, and one was Garfit's Lane playing field.
Yes.
I asked a question in full council about the ANG minutes. So if Amanda will be sending that to me, if that could be circulated to the committee next time, so we know what the accurate values are, that would be really
Yes.
good.
We'll make a note of that for
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Right. Item 4, audit of building control services by the building safety regulator. And I'm going to ask Christian Alladar. Christian, to present your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. I'm here this evening to present a report sharing the outcome of a recent audit of our building control service by the building safety regulator, and then to provide some assurance to members on the work being done to address the non-conformances identified by that audit. I've got with me this evening supporting this item Councillor Baxter, who's the portfolio holder, and then on my right here Pauline Lyon is my group manager for building control and is here to support the committee with any questions that they might have this evening. The building safety regulator was established post Grenfell inquiry probably about 2 years ago, and one of the first things the regulator did was establish a set of operational standards which apply to building control services in local authorities, as well as approved building inspectors who operate in the private sector. It's against these operating standards that the audit was conducted and concluded late last year. And one of those standards is that the outcomes of audits is shared with the management of the organisation, and particularly in the local authority sector with the members, so they understand exactly what's happening within the service. The scope of the audit is set out in the report. It is extensive. The operating standards that were brought in post Grenfell are probably seeing some of the biggest changes we've seen in the building regulations, probably in a generation of our inspectors. And the building safety regulator, as an auditor, takes their auditing of services extremely seriously. So it's quite an extensive and very thorough process that they went through. I've also set out in the report at 2.4 the extensive work that Pauline's been doing with the team to get the services across our partnership in shape to meet the requirements of the building safety regulator. And Boston has been one of the first sort of tranche of local authorities that the BSR has chosen to inspect, and we're very pleased and proud of the outcome from that audit, which again is set out in your report, but it effectively identified 3 areas for improvement, and which we know from conversations with colleagues in the sector are pretty similar to the areas for improvement that have been picked up elsewhere in the country, and are probably arise as a result of the context in which we operate, which again is set out in your report and which has been recognised by the regulator, of really the challenges in terms of funding that local authorities have faced over many years now, and the impact that's had on services generally, but in this context in terms of the building control. So that's all I was going to say. We're obviously here to answer any questions for you this evening. The recommendation before committee tonight is to provide assurance. Sorry, is that members of Audit and Governance Committee note the report and the work underway to meet the requirements of the Building Safety Regulator audit outcome. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Christian. Read it with interest, and it obviously a lot been going on there. Well done. Thank you very much, Pauline, as well. So we're open for questions. Anyone want to start the ball rolling? Councillor Noble.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just two quick questions. Excuse me if I missed, Christian, what they were, but we talked about 3 areas for improvement needed, yeah, following the inspection. Can you say what those 3 areas of improvement were or are?
Yes, of course. There's 3 areas for improvement. 2 are very similar, relate to the legacy inspections that are held within our systems and ensuring that we take a risk-based approach to ensuring that all of those inspections have been fully completed and closed out. As you can imagine, some applications to the service can be speculative. Some applications never get implemented. Some take a lot longer than it was anticipated. So it's just making sure that we've got a risk-based approach to systematically follow those up. The other one relates to an ICT project, which is seeking to update our current operating systems to ensure that we can effectively report on and record all of the new operational standard requirements that have been set out by the BSR.
This is really important, I think, because 2.8 talks about the well-documented shortage of registered building inspectors, particularly the local authorities. Does our council have sufficient building inspectors? Because I think that has been a problem historically.
Thank you. Yes, we do have sufficient building inspectors. We do have sufficient registered building inspectors at Boston as well to cover the breadth of the applications that we receive. But linked to the non-conformances, they were about having sufficient resource to be able to constantly monitor these old and ongoing applications. We are looking into this and we are doing our best. Whether the building safety regulator agrees with that when we go back to them and say, this is what we're doing, this is what we're proactively doing to manage these old applications, remains to be seen, because this is all completely new to everybody. So we've got sufficient resource linked to the structure of building control as it is and as it has been for the last few years. However, we'll have to see what the auditor comes back with when we tell them the steps that we're taking to eliminate these non-conformances. Thank you.
Could I just ask a question, Pauline? These 3 actions that you've got down on here, is there any deadlines and timelines for them to be completed by from the?
Yes, the two similar ones that Christian mentioned first, I've got to go back to the auditor by the end of this month with an update on the actions, so what we're doing. The second one, which is linked to the ICT alignment project, there was a deadline of the end of May to go back to the auditor. So I am preparing some correspondence this week to go back to the auditor before the deadlines, just to give them an update and get a feel for where they think we are with compliance.
And has this created a lot of extra work for your department and your operation, all this extra?
Huge, yeah. huge amount of extra work, from preparing for the introduction of the new legislation to then going through. I mean, the audit was 9 months periodically, so meetings, collecting evidence. So and then now obviously we're into doing what we normally do, and then also making sure that we're doing sufficient to comply with the audit. So a huge amount of work that the teams have not seen for lots and lots of years.
Well, it's very good and very reassuring to hear that the amount of time and effort that's gone into doing all that to get you where you are today. So I congratulate you on that, both Christian, Pauline, and all the people who work with you. Well done. Councillor Dorian.
Thank you. Yeah, congratulations, Pauline and Christian. Thank you for that. And I'm pleased to see the portfolio holder here this evening. It's a shame the finance portfolio holder wasn't here.
Don't need to keep knocking about portfolio holders, so don't keep doing that. Just stick to the topic. We don't want to talk about portfolio holders not being at meetings. It's not applicable.
Yes, it is applicable.
It's not applicable, and they don't have to be if they don't want to be. So just ask your question and don't keep talking about portfolio holders.
Stop being rude to me.
I'm not being rude to you. I'm just putting you.
Incredibly rude
I'm just explaining to you.
And
You
I
just
would like
can't.
you to stop.
No, you stop. Don't keep bringing up things that's happened in the past.
I would like for every scrutiny type panel that meets to have the relevant portfolio holders present. They should be here.
They don't have to be here.
And it is within my gift to make that comment if I wish. Without
I think you've made it enough times. Thank you.
Trying to edit my commentary. Thank you. Back to where I was. Thank you for your report. I was surprised that the audit took as many months as it did. I was also surprised that we didn't have a copy of your action plan in the pack, and I think that would have helped us. Well, you've had questions on it anyway, but I did wonder, if we haven't got it, is it going to be part of the quarterly performance report that Suzanne Roth brings forward? And also, given that it's such a new regime, if you will, have you taken part at an early stage, and are you helping other local authorities refine the process so that they don't have the same kind of angst that you've perhaps had?
Thank you, Councillor Doran, through you, Chair. So I'll take the last question first, really, in terms of sharing learning. Yes, we are through Pauline and the service networks, through the annual conferences. Naturally, we share feedback with colleagues within other services, but also directly with the BSR to help them shape their audit programme. In terms, we won't be reporting the, I'll take on board your comments about the report being attached in appendices. We won't be reporting the outcome from the audit through the performance management framework for the council, but through the management structures we have set up in terms of providing oversight. We will obviously be tracking the progress of the audit outcomes and the dealing with the non-conformances. I'll track those with Pauline and with our senior leadership team, and then also that we are reflecting where we stand from an audit perspective in the risk logs that we maintain for the council. Just back to the learning as well. The learning has directly informed subsequent audits we've had of building control for East Lindsey, and it's enabled us to get ahead of that audit and as a result improve the outcome. And obviously we're sharing that with South Holland as well as our other partner. Thank you.
So would you just pass my congratulations on to your whole team? I know onto your good steer, Pauline, that you've managed to get a lot of our young chaps trained up and qualified in a very good time scale, and I think you should be very proud of your work. They all should. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank Councillor Baxter for attending this meeting. Thank you. Yes, I'm coming to that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing, because when we look at page 140, the background, when you look at that, and then comes to the last line, which is all BCBSs are subject to ongoing monitoring at least once in 5 years. Do you think, is it enough to check things in 5 years? Especially, I mean, we know Boston is a very historic town, and there is a lot of buildings which is you need monitoring probably regularly than once in 5 years.
Thank you. That's the building safety regulator that will come into the Boston Council to audit building control to make sure that we're complying. We are monitoring the developments in the borough regularly. Yes, yeah. So when any building work is going on in the borough, we attend site regularly to make sure it's being built in accordance with the building regulations. So the 5 years is literally just the regulator coming in to check that we're doing what we should be doing.
And that applies on new buildings, old buildings, or just new buildings? Just for clarification.
It's the council's building control team really that they're monitoring that we are doing what we should be doing.
Okay.
On the buildings, basically.
That's good. And because Christian has mentioned, the green, felt towers, what happens in the fire. So things has changed. And we know that there is few buildings in Boston. They are probably asbestos buildings. Is there anything that you cover in these sections?
No, we don't get involved in asbestos at all, and unless we've got a building regulations application. So we don't do reviews of buildings. If we have a building regulations application in, we will take account of if there is asbestos in the building, but building control wouldn't just review buildings for asbestos. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the report, by the way. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? No? Right, the recommendations of the Audit and Governance Committee note the report and the work underway to meet the requirements of the Building Safety Regulator audit outcome. So it's just for noting. Everybody happy with that? Thank you. We'll move on. Item 5 is the Audit and Governance Committee annual report. I'm going to ask Amanda to talk us through that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Members are asked to consider the Audit and Governance Committee's annual report for 2024-25. The report summarises the committee's work during the year, highlighting its role in providing oversight and assurance in relation to audit, governance, risk management, treasury matters and financial reporting. Approval is sought ahead of the report being presented to full council in March, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Any questions? No? Okay. Do you have a proposer, please? Councillor Danny, seconder? Councillor Noble, all in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. We go on to the work programme. The committee is asked to note the work programme. Are there anybody who would like to make any comments or discuss anything with the work programme? Okay, thank you. Now conclude that the meeting is closed, and I thank you for your attendance. Could I just ask members of the committee to hold back for a moment, please? Thank you.